What's up guys, Asian here again with another PTS video, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Elf Bane magDK as of 5.3.3. So this is the would be the fourth week of the PTS cycle here, after they have changed the way that Zaan works with Elf Bane. So for those of you guys who are unaware of the set Elf Bane, this is a base game set, surprisingly enough. It is an very old set at this point. I believe this was out many years ago, before One Tamriel actually. This is a Cyrodiil heavy armor set. So if you're going to be wearing this set, you will want to try to get the jewelry, and you will need two body pieces. You will need two heavy pieces. I like the chest and the legs because they give a little bit more resistances compared to the rest of your armor bonuses. But if you are running Elfbane, you will need to have a light Helm set. So you will have to go with double light for Zaan or Grothdarr. Those are the two best Helm sets to use with Elfbane. You can see the bonuses here are actually pretty favorable towards the magDK. So you have Next Magicka, 2 spell damage, and then the 5-piece increases the duration of our fire damage over time abilities by 5 seconds. Now, I mentioned you want to pair this with Zaan and Grothdarr, and that is because those 5 seconds, the increased duration, does affect Zaan and Grothdarr. So Zaan typically has a duration of 5 seconds, but as you can see here, the beam deals flame damage every 1 second to your enemy for 10 seconds. So this basically doubles the duration of Zaan, and also doubles the duration of Grothdarr as well. I believe Grothdarr is also base 5 seconds, but with Elfbane it becomes 10 seconds on a 10-second cooldown. So in theory, you could have 100% uptime on Grothdarr. So if we go ahead and take a look at Grothdarr really quickly here, you can see here 1 second for 10 seconds, once every 10 seconds. So in theory, 100% uptime on Grothdarr, which is actually really powerful. So Elfbane is potentially a very powerful set for magDKs if you're in a position where you can use either Zaan or Grothdarr. Now, the way it used to work back in 5.3.0 was that every tick of Zaan continued to increase. So you would get the 50% increase in damage every second for 10 seconds. Now, it's not 50% of the previous tick. The wording here is a little bit weird, and it's very poorly written if you ask me, but the damage does increase by 50% of the initial damage. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's go ahead and take a look at one of the parsers that we have here. I'll go to our combat log, and we just want to take a look at Zaan, and we don't want to take that off. Okay, you can see here, this is where Zaan starts to tick. So you have 6210, 8849, 10878, 12908, 14938, and then it caps out at 16967. So you will see here that it is not 50% of the previous tick. So if we were going 50% of the previous tick, this tick would actually be closer to about 9.3k, and then this tick would be closer to 13k, and so on. Each of these ticks actually increases by around 2k or so. And if we take a look back at our Zaan tooltip, 4816. So it's closer to 50% of that 4816 damage, not 50% of the previous tick. Now, you will notice that I did say that Zaan capped out. Now, in 5.3.2, what happened was this would continue to tick all the way up for the 10 seconds. So you would continue to get that additional 2.2k additional damage all the way up for the full 10 seconds. Now, however, they have capped it out after 5 ticks. You cap out at this damage. This does end up decreasing the overall effectiveness of Zaan here, but it still increases the damage that Zaan is able to output. So rather than having massive amounts of DPS as you would normally see, if they kept on going up, you're kind of capped out there. It's still a damage increase to Zaan, though. It is still definitely higher up here than it would be if you didn't have it. So, for example, here, if you go ahead and take a look at Mother Sorrow's parse here, you'll see that Zaan is all the way down here at 4% at 3.2k DPS, versus here when we had Elf Bane, it was up at 7k. So it pretty much almost slightly more than doubles the DPS that Zaan's able to provide. Now, of course, that begs the question, how strong is Elfbane compared to Mother Sorrow? So as you can imagine, I did a couple of tests, and I did 3 parses of each. Now, I did do a separate parse using Mystic Orb instead of Scalding Rune, and I'll talk about that in a little bit here, just to kind of see how things would play out. So I did do 4 with Elf Bane, but one of them I didn't end up counting because it ended up being not as effective as the other setup that I tried out. So the raw numbers for Mother Sorrow are right here, so just shy of 81k, 81.8, and 81.7. So pretty good. And of course, I did standardize the parses, so you will see the standardized parses in a little bit here. So overall, pretty much right on the nose of what we would expect. Now for the Elfbane, I did 2 different bar setups. So the first bar setup, I used Mystic Orb on the back bar. So this was just kind of, well, I'm just going to take the same bars and work with it here. For this, I ended up pulling 81.8, a little bit over that. Then I decided to think about, well, Elfbane increases the duration of fire abilities. The whole point of using Elfbane is to have longer duration between having to reapply my dots, so I can just keep on using my Fire Whip. So I ended up replacing it with Scalding Rune rather than Mystic Orb, because with Mystic Orb I'm still on a 10-second rotation, but when I'm running Scalding Rune now, I am on a closer to about a 18-second kind of rotation here, with Barbed Trap being the shortest duration. Arguably, you can say that Flames of Oblivion is the lowest duration at 15 seconds, but I'm on my front bar anyway, so that doesn't really matter too much. So it's more about that 18-second duration. So that does give me a lot more time to do a lot more Flame Whips, Molten Whips, and that ended up bumping up my DPS up to 82.9, and so I kept with those bars for the next 2 tests, so 82.9. Then I jumped up massively up to 84.4, and then 84, just over 84k here. So huge boost here in our DPS compared to running Mother Sorrow. And if we go ahead and compare it to what we have when we standardize it, jump over here really quickly. So this is the standardized parse with Mother Sorrow. So about 82.5k when we adjust for all of our crit chance, crit modifiers. Here, when we adjust for crit, it bumps up to 84.2k. So this is a pretty large increase here. We're talking about a 2k increase in damage, just shy of 2k increase in damage. And so that is really powerful. It's about 2.5% increase in DPS from Mother Sorrow to Elfbane. So Elfbane is winning out here. Now, there are a few caveats with this. First of all, I was using Zaan. Zaan might not be viable in all fights. For example, Sunspire, you're not going to be using Zaan. You're going to be using either 2 one-piece crit sets, you might be using the Asylum staff, or you might be using Grothdarr. Grothdarr will still pair very well with Elfbane. But if you're using any of the other 2 options that I mentioned, 2 one-piece crit sets, or you're running the Asylum setup, you won't be able to use Elfbane in that situation. So Elfbane is going to be situationally useful and situationally probably best in slot in those fights where you can use Zaan. So pretty much outside of Sunspire and maybe a couple of other fights, I would say that Elfbane is definitely a set you're going to want to pick up for a magDK, assuming of course that nothing changes between now and when Harrowstorm is released on live. I can confidently say at this point that I would recommend keeping an eye out for Elfbane. Now, the thing with Elfbane is if you're getting the jewelry, it does come in healthy trait base game, so you will need to have access to jewelry crafting and transmutation in order to transmute them into more favorable traits like Arcane, Infused, or Bloodthirsty. That's the only downside I would say of running Elfbane. It is gonna take you 150 transmutes in order to make it viable for a magDK, because obviously you don't want to be running healthy jewelry. That's not really good for overall DPS. But that is pretty much the conclusion that I can draw here. Elfbane is here to stay. It is still situationally useful, so you're not going to be using it on every single fight, but for those fights where you can run Zaan or Grothdarr, Elfbane is definitely going to be a very powerful set to run on your magDK. But that concludes this video. Hopefully you guys found this informative. Let me know down in the comment section below if there's anything you would like me to test on the PTS. The next few videos over the next few weeks will kind of be covering less PTS stuff, more sort of generic theory crafting or base game things. So do let me know if there's anything you want me to test on the PTS. Builds will start coming out once Harrowstorm is released on live, so the first build will be coming out on February 24th. Keep an eye on my communities tab on to get a updated schedule on what builds are released on what day. I will be repeating what I did last patch, which is I will have a generic gear video for the DPS, magic cut, and stamina, and then our tank and healer, and then I will be pairing them up for supports and DPS. So, for example, I'll be releasing the Stamina Necromancer and the Magic Necromancer on the same day, and so on. So, take a look back at the previous patch announcement on the Communities tab to kind of get a sense of what the release schedule will look like for Harrowstorm. Again, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next dungeon.